so many recordings going on, guys.
Oh, no, this much for
Do you guys reckon you'll actually watch these videos?
Yes.
I probably will.
So, like, end of year exam, hell yeah. I'm just going to have a binge session of like
I
3
think
days.
it'd be more useful for like people who are sick today, for example, if they want to watch it.
Just going to binge watch
You're
it.
giving us an excuse not to pay attention in class, and then we can just watch the video.
Hell yeah.
You guys are gonna love uni.
No, because I last
Lots of the lectures are recorded, so you have like an 8 AM lecture.
Wait, so you don't even have to go to class?
I'm not going to that. I'll just watch it online, and then you speed it up to 1.5 times.
Wait, so do people actually do that? They just stay home and just watch the lectures?
Yeah, I used to have because you try and get your timetable to be like, if you've got 20 contact hours a week, you try and do it so that you've got like 7 hours a day, right? And then you're only in for 3 days a week. But then inevitably it doesn't work, so you have one lecture on a Thursday at like 1 o'clock. And it's just the one lecture, well, let's just say in the middle of the day, so it's not even in the morning, right? You just got your one lecture at Thursday, and you're like, am I really going to go for that, or am I just going to watch the video? And a lot of people choose the video. Yeah. Some lecturers are smart about it, but also a little mean, and they don't record their lectures.
How's that smart?
Smart because you learn better if you go to the lectures.
If the class is too small to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you actually learn a lot better if you go to the lectures if it's live. Watching it on a camera or on a video, you're just not into it the same way. You don't take in information the same way. It's much better to have a live class. Yeah. But for revision, it's really good. Yeah. All right. Does someone want to finish this sentence for me? Daniel.
What I wrote was, Nagel argues that functionalism is a big no-no to consciousness, as functionalism describes the mental state, and it's not like your mental, like, yeah.
Functionalism doesn't explain consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Don't write it's a big no-no.
Well said.
Did everyone have something like that? Functionalism doesn't include an explanation of consciousness.
Yeah.
Well, you work
So if you write that instead of like smart thinks this is a bad idea, smart thinks this is a big no-no, you get the marks.
No.
Wait,
Really?
what?
Oh, what?
You are.
Do you want to know why?
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 Because it's a big no-no.
Oh.
My
Yeah, if you have if you write on your exam, smart says to dualism, WTF. Or if you say like, Nagel says functionalism and consciousness are a big no-no. Like, I can see where you're going, but you're not going to get marks for that. You have to express yourself correctly, right?
What if that's your lead-in sentence and then you have a bunch of really good explanations, but the first one is, it's a big no-no.
If your first sentence is, it's a big no-no, all you're going to do is annoy your marker a little bit, and they'll cross it out, and then they'll move on to the next bit. Yeah. If a question asks for like 3 examples, right, and you give like a wrong one and a wrong one, and then a right one and then a right one, you're gonna get 1 mark because they only count the first 3 examples that you give. You can't just be like you can't be like if they say give me an example where Descartes explains the difference between mind and body. You can't just list every example Descartes gives, right? They're only going to count the first one. If they ask for 1 example, okay? Go. Read Nagel's blah blah blah. Let's go past that. Past that as well. Let's go to 88.
88, that sounds great. Nice debate.
The right question there is write down all the reasons why Nagel has chosen bats as his central example. Eric, what did you have for that one? Didn't get that one? Okay, August, did you have that one? Right, I read. Didn't that one?
They rely on their senses more than any other animal.
Not quite right.
They perceive like everything differently, like how they perceive things differently from us.
They perceive things very differently because they have different sensory apparatus. Yeah? Abdul, what did you say again?
I said they rely on their senses
More than us.
like
It's not that they rely on their senses more or less than us, it's that they have different sensory apparatus. I reckon we got about 8 minutes that time.
Whoa.
no, but you can say that about every animal. Every animal has different sense perceptions. Even
Absolutely.
dogs.
Good.
Why?
Very good.
Specifically bats.
Why specifically bats?
Because you like that. Batman.
He's probably a DC fan.
No, he wasn't a
Echolocation.
DC fan.
How did you?
Why bats, guys? He gives us a whole paragraph. They're very different. They're so alien. Yeah. Anyone who's been in a close room with a bat knows what it's like to encounter an alien form of life. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
He's chosen bats not because it doesn't work with any animal. It does, he thinks. We don't know what it's like to be a dog. But dogs are closer to our type of experience than bats because dogs have sight, hearing, taste, smell, the things that we have. Bats, though, have a completely different kind of sensory apparatus. They have echolocation. It's their prime sense for perception. Does that make sense to everyone? So he's chosen them because it's a fundamentally different type of perception, and it's really, really, really hard for us to imagine, even impossible. Yeah? We're going to read a footnote today that he counters that a little bit. Yeah?
Do
But,
bats
we'll come
attack
back to it.
humans?
sorry?
Do bats attack humans?
Very rarely.
What if they just like fly up to you?
Some bats are vampire bats, right? So they suck blood from things like cows, mostly. Yeah? But it would have to be incredibly hungry to attack a human. They're pretty scary, guys.
Exactly.
Even though, like, animals kill us a bunch of the time, think how many animals we kill every year. We are well on top of the food chain.
We have guns.
And we also have consciousness.
If a lion
Right.
can turn around and use a gun, I mean, I'm pretty sure we
Alright.
go pretty far.
Discuss on page 89. It says science can tell us a lot about echolocation, such as what sizes of objects it detects, how a bat directs its ears to a stream of sound data, and how a bat's senses operate to tell it about its world. With the right equipment, we can even experience echolocation for ourselves. We could have microphones, we could have headphones, and we could try and experience what echolocation is like. So, number one, in Nagel's view, is this enough for us to claim that we can understand a bat's experience? Everybody?
No.
No.
Thank you. Number two, in your view, is this enough for us to claim we can understand bat experience? Everybody?
No.
Everyone agrees with Nagel. Interesting. Nagel says that even if we could turn into a bat, we still couldn't understand bat experiences. Is that exactly what he says?
Yeah.
When you were a bat, could you understand it?
But you understand it in like human terms.
You wouldn't understand it in human terms, exactly. And you couldn't foretell what it would be like to be a bat, could you? Yeah, so if you were a bat, you would know what it would
Like
be like to be a
we
bat.
can't say how it's like to be humans. We can't describe how it's like to be us.
Yeah, nice one. Let's go back to the reading, and I think we're at paragraph 12.
From trying to get two. How many more texts are we studying this year?
7.
7 more texts.
Yeah.
That's
Why are you surprised?
You're insane.
Why are you surprised?
7. It's like
Yeah, I'll
we've done 3, so that's like 10 in
How
total.
many
We're
more
not,
texts were?
Yeah, so we've done 3 texts this term. Guys, you will like this news. I have decided that our SAC will be
next time.
very, very early next term.
My God, my God. I was prepared to, I was cheesed, I was like,
Yeah.
That was
That's
solid.
Yeah.
We give
This
8
means I
kept
have
sector.
2 sections.
Now we can't let go.
That means I have
Seem just
have those
I had
Okay.
some
Wait, but
chill,
no,
chill.
I'm also
So-
covalent bonds.
So what that does mean is that you will have the holidays to prepare for the SAC, but I should let you know we are starting Area of Study 2 before the end of the term.
Damn it.
So even though we are not actually studying, we're not doing the SAC until for this Area of Study 1 until next term, we will start Area of Study 2 very briefly at the very end of next week. And then your holiday homework will be twofold. You'll have to do not just the holiday homework I was going to give you for Area of Study 2, which is personal identity. You'll also have to prepare for your SAT.
So G.
Oof, sir.
But I figured you would prefer to have the holidays to prepare for your SAT rather than just the weekend and Tuesday night.
For our first sack, how much have you marked us?
None of it yet.
None of it.
But I'll get you your SAC marks by the end of the term.
I was about to ask, like, how well did we do so far?
Yeah, I haven't marked them yet, so I don't know. In conversations, you guys are going pretty well. Be interesting for me to see how well it translates to paper. Yeah. I will say that if you I'm sensing that understanding is in the ballpark of where I'd like it to be. Yeah? People are seeming to do okay. That doesn't necessarily translate to doing well on SAC. So understand that some of your marks, potentially, like I said, I haven't read them. Some marks might not just be there, not necessarily because you didn't understand it, but because you didn't know how to express it. Does that make sense? Expressing your knowledge is just as important as knowing it, understanding. Yeah, being able to express and explain what you know. So we'll see how we go, and I'll let you know by the end of the term. Yep.
So like the next sack is on like part A and part B, the same as the last one.
No, the next SAC will be section A, B, and C. It'll be 2 hours. So you'll have short answer questions, which will be on anything including Descartes, Smart, and Nagel. You can be pretty sure that I will be focusing on Nagel in the short answer section.
So
Section B will be 2 10-mark questions, just like the last one. And then section C will be an essay. So part of your holiday homework will be to write an essay and send it to me for feedback.
Around how many words does the essay have to be?
I can't really answer that very well, but it would be hard to score full marks with an essay less than 2 pages.
Well, why
So
don't
that's
you
like
write really
roughly-
small?
Wait, we had 90 minutes to do our last sack, right?
You have 2 hours to do the next.
That means like we only have half an hour more to just do a
To
whole
run a
essay.
2-page
So,
essay.
And
for
the
example,
essays are hard.
so in the exam itself, there will be 70 marks, and you have 2 hours to do it. So it's about an hour, a minute, 45 per mark.
Well,
Does that make sense to everyone? A minute 45 per mark. Yeah. In the sack that I just gave you, there were 40 marks, and it was done over 90 minutes. That was
Right.
2 minutes per mark. A bit over. So I gave you slightly more time, and over the course of the year, I'm going to be reducing the time until it reflects the, not halving. I'm going to go from slightly more than 2 minutes per mark to slightly less than 2 minutes per mark. It's not that much of a difference. Yeah? Yeah. Cool. Keep in mind that the essay is like a fair bit of writing, but compare that to 20 marks worth in section A. Like all of section A is going to be worth well. Section A in the exam this year is 30 marks, and section C is worth 20 marks. So if you can spend as long as you do on section A on one essay, that's worth the same amount of marks, right? Question?
What if you write really small compared to others? Like someone could write 2 pages.
Yeah, it's not about like the amount of paper that you cover. It's about the amount of ideas that you cover and how well.
Okay.
Yeah. So to add to that as well, in philosophy, we love it if you are concise. If you can say a lot in a short amount of space.
So then how are you supposed to get lots of ideas?
Yeah. So to get full marks, you would have to write about 2 pages, and your writing would have to be dense. By dense, I mean that there's lots of ideas packed into not too much writing. Don't stress too much about the essays, guys. A lot of you have done essays already from last year. Others of you, you'll have lots of time to practice before the exam essay. We're going to be writing a lot, so you're going to get used to it. Okay? Don't stress. Is anyone doing literature? Couple of people. Yeah, in literature they have to write like a whole story every week, and it gets them really good at writing stories, right? There's like a term where they have to do like a short story, and they have to write like 5 pages every week. Yeah, it's quite a lot. You guys don't know about that yet? Unlucky.
God damn it, sir.
You guys are going to be writing a lot.
Spoilers.
Yeah, because it helps you get really good at writing. Yeah.
It's whack.
It's the same story over and over again. I'm talking about your creative piece for those who are doing literature. You do year 12, you'll do a creative piece, and you have to redo your draft.
You know what it sounds like? Hero.
Alright, 12. Let's go around the circle just like we have. Did we start 12 last time?
Which one was 12?
Oh my god, I saved it with my phone.
Yeah, let's start it again.
Sorry, sorry about that.
Fine, I know.
Alright.
So I couldn't save your tab.
I'm the one who dropped.
So the last time we were reading, we were talking about Martians and bats. So if you remember, we're talking about aliens and bats and how it's impossible for us to understand the subjective nature, like the point of view or what it's like to be a Martian or a bat. Now, does it matter that Martians don't exist?
Not really.
No, not really. The whole point of the thought experiment is just that there are things that are separate to us that do have a point of view and that we can't experience. Yeah? So, Nick, do you want to start?
Really?
Yeah.
Alright. If anyone is inclined to deny that we can believe in the existence of facts like this, whose exact nature we cannot possibly conceive, he should reflect that in contemplating the bats, we are in much the same position that intelligent bats or Martians would occupy if they tried to form a conception of what it was like to be us.
Nice one. Damon, what do you think?
Like because we can't really, they're different to us and we can't conceive them. Like, it's like pretty much if bats or Martians try to do the same thing, they wouldn't be able to understand what it's like to be us.
Nice one. Good. So can we all highlight, please, the existence of facts like this whose exact nature we cannot possibly conceive? The existence of facts like this, what kind of facts is he talking about? What can't a Martian understand about us? And what can't we understand about a Martian? Their consciousness, right? The subjective nature of their consciousness. This is an important point that he's going to riff on for a number of paragraphs after this.
That's right.
That's not exactly.
So not just that Martians, well, we'll get to it later. Jeremy? Next one.
The structure of their own minds might make it impossible for them to succeed, but we know that they would be wrong to conclude that there is not anything precise that is like to be us, that only certain general types of mental state could be ascribed to us. Perhaps perception and appetite would be concepts common to us both, perhaps.
Yep. Daniel?
Basically, they're saying. So basically, they're saying with their knowledge, they're not able to understand us, but they can like make out some stuff.
They know that we have experience,
Yeah.
don't they? But they don't know what the experience is like. Andy?
We know they would be wrong to draw such a skeptical conclusion because we know what it is like to be us.
Adam? The skeptical conclusion would be that we don't have experience. We don't have consciousness. So what does that mean then?
They know that we have some sort of experience.
Mhm.
They can't doubt it. But because only we know how it's like to be us.
Yeah, good. Okay, we know that they would be wrong to draw such a skeptical conclusion because we know what it is like to be us. So the Martians could be drawing either this or this statement. I doubt that humans, remember this is from a Martian point of view, have consciousness. Or they could be saying humans don't have consciousness. It's a subtle difference, but it's important. Talk about this with the person next to you. What is the difference between these two statements, and which ones would the Martians be wrong to draw as a conclusion? Talk about it to the person next to you. Why are these different? Why would they
Oh yeah, it's what's called an absolute statement. If you make an absolute velocity,
Yeah, sure. But could the aliens
the chair is blue. And that still could be
they
wrong.
can't access that. They don't know we have it, right?
If you said no, it could be your perception of
But
it.
can they do the second one? No.
So I doubt they
They'd
can
be
use
wrong
consciousness.
for
They
that.
use more rocket error.
Even though they can't understand. It's not possible to understand what's like the art.
Yeah.
Alright, do we get that? The difference? Good. Aliens are allowed to do number one. If we meet Martians, we're allowed to do this for them as well. You're allowed to doubt if they have consciousness, right? Like you can draw that as a skeptical belief if you want. But it seems ridiculous to do this one. To say that humans don't have consciousness, or Martians don't have consciousness. If you say Martians don't have consciousness, it seems likely that you're going to be wrong. Does that make sense? If there are Martians. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's possible that you're right, yeah? But it seems likely that you're wrong. Now, this is despite the fact that we can't know what it's like to be a Martian. Yeah? Not just don't know, but can't know. Yeah? Those facts are not conceivable by us. What it's like to be a bat, Nagel says, is inconceivable. Anyone seen Princess Bride?
Inconceivable.
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 So this is a really important point for Nagel. He thinks that there are facts in the universe, or things that are part of the nature of reality, that are not within the scope of our knowledge. They are humanly inaccessible facts or concepts. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Cool. Talk to the person next to you. What else might be a humanly inaccessible concept? It's a really hard question, right? Like, what's an example of something that not only we don't know, but we couldn't know, ever? The smartest human ever, 3,000 years from now. There's no way they could possibly know it. Talk to the person next to you. How are we supposed to be?
What is like not to
So we want another way. We want another way.
all knowing. You're trying to ink it and touch it.
I got the plastic one.
We don't know. No, we're smart enough to know how to we want
I knew I did that.
partner.
Yeah, the universe. It's infinite every day.
No, it's not infinite.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's expanding.
Yeah, it's infinite.
No. That it means it's finite. If it's infinite means infinite means it never ends.
Yeah. Right now it's expanding.
So it's like a balloon.
Alright. Did anyone come up with anything?
What it's like not.
Yeah?
We had, like, you can't existence of God, you can't determine 100%.
We can't know.
Yeah, we can't know for sure. What else? We also can't know.
Does anyone agree with Damon? Just before you go on.
Does anyone agree?
Don't know.
Whether God exists or not?
Oh,
Is that the question?
Whether we can know if God exists.
Know if God exists. We can't know if God exists or not.
Oh, I know.
Does anyone want to challenge
I
Damon?
have one. Wait, we don't know.
Are you going to challenge Damon?
No, no.
Okay, well then wait. Does anyone want to respond? Is that something we can't know?
Okay.
Then we could know. It's possible if we die and we go to an afterlife. Are there some people that believe that God exists?
Yes.
Right, and if he does, would they be right?
Yes.
So is that then something that they could know?
No, because
It's the
They can't know.
justified belief, justified true belief.
One the Plato's tripartite theory of knowledge is that knowledge is justified true belief. Let's say that someone is justified, let's just take that for granted, and they have a belief that God is real, and then it turns out that it's true. Let's just imagine that situation for now. Does that count as knowledge?
No.
Knowledge. Seems no, don't think so. Why not?
I don't know, it just happened to be.
Oh, that thing.
Just happens to be right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't track the truth. Getty a problem. All right, well, let's imagine that God appeared to someone and he said, hey, guess what, guys, I exist. And then the person was like, yes, you do. Would that count as knowledge, Damon?
That's happened to that.
Yeah.
So that's something we can know.
But would you say hey or would you say like howdy? I'd like to think you say howdy.
In my example, I prefer howdy also, but it doesn't actually really matter. The point, guys, is that like knowing whether something exists or not seems like it's within the realm of our conceptual ability. Yeah? We might not be able to understand like a God that created the universe in its entirety, but we could basically understand whether it exists or not, couldn't we? Like if someone thinks, hey, God exists, and then he does exist or it does exist, then you'd be right. And that seems like it fits within our conceptual scheme. But, and alternatively, if someone thinks God doesn't exist and he doesn't, then they'd be right. Does that make sense? So that seems like to me like something that is within our possibility to understand, within our the scope of our understanding. Does that make sense? Anything else? Abdul, you have one?
We don't know how it feels, and we can't know how it feels like to be dead.
Ooh, that could be a good one. Can you explain?
Well, any living person doesn't know the experience of death, like
Until you experience it.
yeah, until you experience it.
That's true.
Like you don't know what you feel.
Yeah, sure. It's
But you don't know that.
But since you're dead.
It's an interesting one. It's an interesting
Yeah,
one. We're going to have to come back to
Yeah,
that.
but
Post it on Facebook and see what people comment. Okay? Guys, we're going to move on because I've spent too long on this already. So we're up to, and we know that while it includes an enormous amount of variation and complexity, and while we do not possess the vocabulary to describe it adequately, its subjective character is highly specific and in some respects describable in terms of that can be understood only by creatures like us. That's our experience, right? Even though our experience is really hard to describe, the quality of our experience, our subjective experience, our qualia, is really hard to describe. We know it's highly specific. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, next bit then. And can you underline or highlight or something this section? The fact that we cannot expect ever to accommodate in our language a detailed description of Martian or bat experience, phenomenology. Yeah, we can't hope in our language, in our conceptual scheme, to account for Martian or bat phenomenology. But that should not lead us to dismiss as meaningless the claim that bats and Martians have experiences, fully comparable in richness of detail to our own. It would be wrong of us to conclude this one, number 2. Humans don't have consciousness, or Martians don't have consciousness. It would be wrong of us to say that bats don't have a specific feeling of what it's like to be a bat, even though, in our language, it's impossible for us to describe. Everyone good with that? Can we write a little note next to that, please, to explain that, just so you remember? I wrote, our lack of understanding / ability to explain does not preclude our knowledge, does not mean we can't explain that qualia is a specific phenomena.
Can you say that again?
Our lack of understanding, I'll write it up. Our lack of understanding / inability to explain bat phenomenology, which is what it's like to be a bat, yeah, does not
Middle of the sentence,
mean we can conclude that bats do not have a richness of experience equal to our own. when he says richness of experience, he's talking about like the what it's like to be about, the qualia of being about, the phenomenology. Lots of words that mean very similar sorts of things there. When I say equal, and when Nagel says equal, it does not mean the same as. He means to the same level as. Yeah? That phenomenology is not the same as our phenomenology. If it was, we could understand it.
But then they'd also be humans.
But then they'd be humans, exactly. Exactly the point. Very good. And you'd be Batman. Or Man-Bat. Man-Bat. Alright, it would be fine if someone was to develop concepts and a theory that enabled us to think about those things. I find it hard to imagine how this would work, but Nagel seems to think that it's possible that we could develop concepts and a theory that make it possible for us to understand that phenomenology. Possible for us to understand what it's like to be a bat. Yeah? He's like, that would be fine. But such an understanding may be permanently denied to us by the limits of our nature. He's leaving open the door, right? He's saying, it is possible that maybe in the future we'll develop concepts that allow us to understand what it's like to be a bat. But it's also possible that we may never be able to do that because of the way we are, because of the way our consciousness, our mind, and because of our nature. Does that make sense? It's not part of our nature to be a bat, and this may mean that we can never understand what it's like to be a bat. Cool? This next bit is a really important little sentence for our comparison with smart. So, and to deny the reality or logical significance of what we can never describe or understand is the crudest form of cognitive dissonance. Why is that relevant? Cognitive dissonance means you have two ideas that don't fit together.
Because they don't fit together. I guess.
Or you have a problem in the way you're thinking. So, to deny the reality or logical significance of what we can never describe or understand. Why is that bad? What sorts of things might we be denying the reality of? Yeah, the truth of what? What's he talking about here? Yeah, consciousness and what it's like to be a bat, right? So if you're going to deny that bats have experience, why would you deny it? Well, just because we can't understand it. You're like, well, I can't understand how bats could have an experience because it's different to us. So I guess it's not logically significant, or it doesn't matter.
That's secondary issue.
Who else denies that consciousness matters very much? Smart, right? And materialism. So next to that, just write implication or materialism should not ignore consciousness just because we can't explain it. Or I can't understand or account for it. Hopefully you guys see that this is like a bit of a sick burn.
Sick burn, bro.
He's not just saying it's like, it goes a step too far. Yeah, or it's not a step far enough if you don't explain consciousness. He says it's the crudest form of cognitive dissonance.
Oh, that's philosophy
fire
distract.
line.
Philosophy diss track,
Don't know what's
exactly.
that, guys.
You're saying the
Yeah.
crudest form, like the most basic, idiotic
For
way of having a problem with your conceptual scheme. Yeah? If someone comes up to you and they bag you out for some reason, and you're like, there's a problem with your ideas in the way you've just bagged me out, you can say to them, you're expressing the crudest form of cognitive dissonance. And then they'll be like, what are you even on about? And you'll be
But
like,
you know what you
philosophy.
sick burn them.
Alright, next page.
Okay, sounds good, try that.
Let's go to the next page.
Can we title this one, 13, let's title it Facts and Conceptual Schemes. Are we up to you, Megan?
Yeah.
Excellent. Try for it.
This brings us to the edge of a topic that requires much more discussion than I can give it here. Namely, the relation between facts on the one hand and conceptual schemes or systems of representation on the other.
The relation between facts on the one hand and conceptual schemes or systems of representation on the other is not something. It is something that requires much more discussion than he can give it here.
Nice, but he's going to give it 2 paragraphs anyway. What's a conceptual scheme or a system of representation? What's an edifice, Ryan?
I don't know.
That's right. Andy?
System of belief.
A system of belief, right? So your edifice is like all your beliefs put together in terms of the way that they relate in your mind, in your conceptual scheme. Yeah, your system of beliefs is all of your beliefs together. The way your concepts, which concepts you have and how they fit together is your conceptual scheme, right? And the idea is that one idea of the way human mind works and our understanding works is that it's a system of representation. So we use concepts as things that represent things in the world for us. For example, we have a concept of blueness that represents the feeling you're all having now when you look at this. Does that make sense? Nice. We also include some other things in our sense of blueness, like a connection with water and being calm, etc. Right? So it's not like a perfect representational system, is it? Because our concept of blueness doesn't directly correlate or directly map exactly with what's in the world. But it is a useful system that we use, especially when talking with each other and the world, right? You guys study Gattaca in Year 10?
Oh.
No? Some of you will, some of you wouldn't. When there's like water involved in a movie or a book, it's often symbolic as part of some broader theme, right? So that is part of our system of representation. It represents something for us and to us. Does that make sense? Cool. But there's a relationship between facts on the one hand, say for example the ontological existence of this marker, and systems of representation and conceptual schemes on the other, which is like your idea of what a marker is for and about, your sense of blueness, etc. Does that make sense? Good so far? Cool. He's not going to be able to talk about this for long, just for 2 paragraphs. Let's see what he has to say. Ryan, next bit.
My realism about the subjective domain in all its forms implies a belief in the existence of facts beyond the reach of human concepts.
That's a big one, Evan. Give it a go. No shot. It's a hard one. Can we write this either in your book or next to it there? Realism is the belief that things are real in and of themselves might help us understand. Who can tell me what anti-realism is then?
Things are.
Nothing's real.
Nothing's real.
Everything's fake.
Everything is an illusion.
Are those solipsists?
Solipsist, yeah, you're getting towards the right sort of areas of debate if you're thinking about solipsism as a boundary test. You guys ever heard about the two-slit experiment in quantum physics? I'm doing too many segues today, but we're going to do another one because it's really interesting. So if you are a scientist and you fire an electron at a small gap in some paper, so you have a paper sheet here and it's got a small gap. Let's say it's not much more than 1 electron thick, this gap in the paper, right? And then you have over here an electron gun. And you can use this gun to fire off 1 electron at a time. Yeah? And you fire it from where the gun is, which will be my camera, through this paper and this one slit in the paper towards this. It's going to hit here and it's going to leave a mark. What's the pattern going to look like? Electrons, yeah, sure, but what's the pattern going to look like? There's a slit in the paper, right? So when it hits here, what's the pattern going to look like? There's going to be one here, yeah, and there'll be one down here because some will come in on a different angle. But basically, it'll all hit like that. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, interesting. There's another one where if you get 2 slits, right, then there's going to be, if there's 2 slits in the paper, then it seems like you get a pattern like this. Does that make sense? Because the electron will go through one or the other of the slits in the paper, and it'll hit the wall like that. Does that seem right to everyone? Everyone good so far? Cool. That is what happens if you watch it. If you do the experiment and you stand at the gun and you watch as you fire it at the paper, some of the electrons hit the paper, right? Like a lot of them, because maybe you miss, right? But you hit the slits enough that they go through and they form 2 lines. But if you go away out of the room, it behaves differently. It forms a wave pattern. What happens when waves hit 2 slits in, say, a dam or a wall is that they start to spread out like a wave, like a ripple in the water. Yeah? And then what you get is they hit the wall in an interference pattern, which means that there's a few, and there's lots more, and then there's a few, and then there's lots more. There's lots more like that, all the way across the page. So you get these areas of really dense electron hitting, and areas of really weak electrons hitting. How do the electrons hit over here? Crazy, right? It's because they act like a wave. Yeah? So what was the difference? How did I make the electrons act like a wave?
Left.
Left. Good. What if we sneakily put a camera in the room, but we don't tell the electron gun. We don't tell the electrons. We just sneak a camera into the room, and then we leave and we close the door. We're like, I'm leaving now to the electron gun, and we close the door. What happens?
Gullible fool.
The electrons hit in 2 slits, just as if we were watching, because the camera is watching. But if you take the camera away, it goes back to being an interference.
Why? For why?
Wait, really? Wait, what?
What's the reason?
Doesn't that sound crazy?
What?
That's like
That's
when
crazy,
you're
it's
at
crazy,
home
it's
watching
crazy.
your toys, they just act like nothing. But when you go away, they play Toy Story.
Well, what's the reason?
I don't know what the reason is. It's quantum physics. So genuinely,
The hell quantum
physicists think that particles act differently when they're being observed. So particles are like in a quantum state where they exist in several places at once based on different probabilities. They're 50% likely to be in one spot, 30% likely to be in another spot, 20% likely to be in another spot.
That's mind.
And they exist not in any of those one spots, but in all of them at once, but with different probabilities. When you look at them, they resolve. They're like, oh, I guess I better be in one spot now. And they form into one spot, and then that's where they are. This is real physics right now today, guys. This is what quantum physics is, right? So the idea is that our perception of something, us actually looking at something, means that it forms into a place in the world. Is that kind of freaky?
Yes.
Right. Some people use ideas and experiments like this to be not maybe anti-realists, but certainly like solipsists, right? They think that everything's in their own mind and that the world only forms when you think about it or you see it, you observe it. Does that make kind of sense? If you're interested in this sort of stuff, you can look up the 2-slit experiment. Yeah? On YouTube. There's a billion videos. You can find it. Someone posted it on Facebook, maybe. Alright, back to facts and conceptual schemes. So, we have facts on the one hand, things that things that are in the world or facts about the world. And then we have our systems of representation. And then he's a realist about the subjective domain in all its forms. What does that mean? He's a realist about what? What does exist, he thinks. It's subjective.
The experience.
Our experience, right? And we can say, starting with the big C, consciousness, right? He thinks that consciousness is a real thing that exists in the world. We all okay with that? Like, who doesn't think that consciousness is a real thing? Maybe starting with the big B. Behaviorists, right? They don't think that mental states are real things. We have no inner experience. It's just like made up, it's an illusion, something like that. Yeah? But he thinks that there really exists, so he's a realist about the subjective domain. Implies a belief in the existence of facts beyond the reach of human concepts. So what have we said is beyond the reach of human understanding? What it's like to be a bat. Nice. And he thinks that what it's like to be a bat is a real thing in the world. He's a realist about bat consciousness. And so that means that in the world there are things that exist that we cannot understand. Everyone good with that? Can we write that next to it?
Hey, so where are we writing this again?
Next to 13.
Oh,
I would be. It's up to you, but something about subjective reality or subjective experience of bats being real, maybe, and then it being inaccessible to human understanding. Dem, you working there, or are you just browsing the internet? Just browsing.
Some things exist in the world which you can understand.
I have it all on a Google Doc. It's actually Google Docs.
Nice. Alright, next one. I might just take it up from here. Certainly, it is possible for a human being to believe that there are facts which humans will never possess the requisite concepts to represent or comprehend. Indeed, it would be foolish to doubt this given the finiteness of humanity's expectations. After all, there would have been transfinite numbers, even if everyone had been wiped out by the Black Death before Cantor discovered them. Does anyone know what a transfinite number is? What's the point of the example? Alright, talk to the person next to you. What's the point of this example? What do you think, Eric?
What?
So if everyone thinks
A masculine and feminine.
then do you think transfinite numbers would have still been a real thing?
Not necessarily. Okay, so basically it's infinite, but
Black
not
Death
too
doesn't like
ridiculous.
wipe out the existence of mathematical
Like
concepts.
they are infinite.
It's male and female.
And then we would never have known what they were. But they still exist, right? Good, that's the number. There's stuff that we don't know just because we write it.
Transfinite is not totally infinite.
Yeah? The stuff we
It
can know,
can
we
be like
don't.
it's nearly infinite.
Then
It's
there's
bigger than all
something we
finite
can't know.
numbers, but it's not absolutely infinite. It doesn't go from.
You guys see the difference?
Yeah, pretty much.
For example, advanced math is something you don't. You guys good with that?
Indeed.
You could know. Couldn't
Finiteness of
you?
human.
You do all those studies, and you prepare, and you like work
After all,
maybe your
there
whole
would
life.
be transfinite
You figure it
numbers.
out, right? But you might not ever know what it's like to be a bat, and you couldn't. There's no way you can do that. Makes sense?
There wouldn't
Unless
be
you figure out a way to
transfinite
transform it.
numbers, even if everyone
Alright,
had wiped out.
come back to you.
Oh, Cantor was the guy who found transfinite numbers. They exist even.
Jordan, what do you think?
I think I just figured it out.
Yep.
Transfinite numbers are a concept which
Yep.
somebody found.
Yep.
Right.
Cantor.
What's it called? They still would have existed even if he had not found them.
Yeah, if he, for example, died in the Black Plague. Good, so they still would have existed. But is it possible for us to understand transfinite numbers?
To the concept.
Let's say yes, right? The whole point of the example is that there are things that we can understand. So imagine, do you guys understand calculus? Do you think you could?
Yeah.
Right. So let's say you don't understand calculus, right? Yeah. But you could understand it if you put in the study and the time. It's within the bounds of your understanding. It's within the possibility of your understanding. Does that make sense? But could you understand what it's like to be a bat if you just studied it really hard? No. Right. So let's read on. But one might also believe that there are facts which could not ever be represented or comprehended by human beings, even if the species lasted forever. Simply because our structure does not permit us to operate with concepts of the requisite type, the required type. This impossibility might even be observed by other beings, but it's not clear that the existence of such beings, or the possibility of their existence, is a precondition of the significance of the hypothesis that there are humanly inaccessible facts. So a humanly accessible fact is something that we could conceivably understand. We can conceivably comprehend. Does that make sense to everyone? A humanly inaccessible fact is something that with no amount of time, no one in our species could ever possibly understand. Species. So imagine that our species lasted literally forever. Let's just say that there's no end to the human race. We colonize the stars. We become super intelligent. Our understanding of the universe goes incredibly far beyond what we have today. We realize that maths is a joke or something and blah blah blah, right? Imagine that we go so far beyond our present understanding. Nagel is saying there will still be facts about the world that are humanly inaccessible. Things that no matter how hard we study, no matter how much knowledge we amass, we will not ever be able to understand because we can't form concepts of the requisite type. What's he talking about here?
Concept of being a bat?
What it's like to be a bat. Very good. Right? We can't understand what it's like to be a bat because we're not bats. Okay? Everyone good with that? Yeah. I highlighted humanly inaccessible facts just to remind me what this paragraph was about. And I'll keep going. After all, the nature of beings with access to humanly inaccessible facts is presumably itself a humanly inaccessible fact. What is the nature of being a bat? Right? Well, we don't really know.
Hell if I know.
I think he's probably more thinking about aliens there, but let's keep going. Reflection on what it's like to be a bat seems to lead us, therefore, to the conclusion that there are facts that do not consist in the truth of propositions expressible in a human language. So there are facts that do not consist in the truth of propositions expressible in a human language. That's a really strong claim. Do you guys see how strong that is? Saying that there are things beyond our language, which really means beyond the grasp of our concepts, our system of representation, to represent. All good? Do you want to write a note for that, or should we keep going?
Write a note, yes.
Yes, maybe just highlight it. And the last bit is we can be compelled to recognize the existence of such facts without being able to state or comprehend them. Do bats have an experience, would you say?
Most likely so, yeah.
Most likely so is probably a good answer there. Yeah. He's saying, though, that we should be compelled to believe that they do have an experience. Do you think he's right there? Do bats certainly have an experience? It's an area of possible objection. Yeah? But if you do object that, it's a pretty strong objection in the sense that you're then denying that anything that's not human doesn't have a consciousness, doesn't have an experience, doesn't have what it's like to be them. And that seems pretty strong. Does everyone sort of see that? No one initially argued that, gorillas don't have an experience, for example, or bats don't have an experience. You were all pretty on board with them having consciousness, yeah? Cool. So it's a pretty strong claim if you're going to object to that. 14. I should not pursue this subject, however, its bearing on the topic before us, the mind-body problem, is that it enables us to make a general observation about the subjective character of experience. Whatever may be the status of facts about what it's like to be a human being, or a bat, or a Martian, these appear to be facts that embody a particular point of view. Should we explain that or keep going? Explain it? Okay, so the understanding of some facts seems to be dependent on having a particular point of view. Maybe we could write that as a note. The understanding of some facts seems to be dependent on having a particular point of view. Alright, let's do one more paragraph and then we'll talk about thought experiment. So, I'm not adverting. It's a funny word. That might be the wrong word there. Here to the alleged privacy of experience to its possessor. It's a big sentence that means the problem of other minds. Let's write that next to it, please. The problem of other minds. Does anyone know what that problem is? Other minds. The problem of other minds is the problem of being certain that other minds exist. Has anyone ever thought to themselves, what if I'm the only one with a mind and everyone else is just like part of a dream?
That's why I took philosophy.
Really?
Yes.
Nice, to figure out if we have minds.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Anyone offended by the fact that Jordan doesn't think they have a mind? I'm just kidding.
What? I've been thinking that for a long time, so I don't know. I can't tell if it's like could be true.
It seems like a pretty common sense belief, right? To imagine that we all have minds, right? And it seems like a very functional belief, doesn't it? Like it helps us function in the world to assume that everyone else has another mind. But how do we know it is a kind of a problem, right? So how can we know that other people have minds? That's a bit of a problem. That's what he's referring to there. He's saying that we all have this private sense of experience that no one else can access. No one else can access the way I experience redness, for example. Make sense to everyone? Cool, moving on. The point of view in question is not one accessible only to a single individual. Rather, it's a type. A type of point of view is what he wants to talk about here. It's often possible to take up a point of view other than one's own, so the comprehension of such facts is not limited to one's own case. It's possible to take up a point of view other than one's own. Abdul, can you look at this, please?
Yeah.
Daniel, can you close your eyes? Daniel, can you imagine what it's like to be seeing what Abdul sees?
No.
You're not sure?
You just read, come on.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it's like to see redness?
Yeah.
At least that, you can imagine that type of experience, can't you? Even though your eyes are closed and you're not looking at it. So you can imagine at least the type of experience that Abdul's having, right?
I guess.
Okay, cool, let's keep going. There is a sense in which phenomenological facts, like what it's like to experience, are perfectly objective, as in explainable from no one's point of view. One person can know or say of another what the quality of the other's experience is. Daniel can say what it's like for Abdul to see something red. Nagel is saying here. Yeah? Or what it's like for someone to get, I don't know, clapped on the shoulder. Yeah? They are subjective, however, in the sense that even this objective description of experience is possible only for someone sufficiently similar to the objective description to be able to adopt his point of view, to understand the description in the first person as well as in the third, so to speak. Ryan, I think we're up to you. What does that mean?
For which sentence?
What does it mean to understand something in the first person as well as in the third person?
You as seeing it through a third person, you can't know what a first person is seeing.
Yeah, good. You can describe how things are in third person, But that's different to knowing what it's like to be in the first person. Yeah? Can I understand what it's like generally to see things through your eyes?
Yeah.
Nagel is saying yes. He's saying yes. We can understand generally what type of experience each other are having because we're sufficiently similar to each other. Does that make sense? Can we understand what it's like to be a bat? No, because we're not sufficiently similar, he says, to have that type of experience. Does that make sense? Cool, let's write something like that out next to it. Actually, let's finish it first. Sorry, the more different from oneself the other experiencer is, the less success we can expect with this enterprise, with imagining what it's like to be them. In our own case, we occupy the relevant point of view, but we'll have as much difficulty understanding our own experience properly if we approach it from another point of view, as we would if we tried to understand the experience of another species without taking up its point of view. So does Nagel think we can understand the types of experience that we have with each other? He does, right? He thinks that we have enough experience with the facts of experience of those like us to understand it. So let's definitely write something down for this one. 15. We are sufficiently similar. Write down whatever you like to explain the point, but I'll write one here. Alright, above 16, I'd like you to write consequences for materialism. Or maybe for reductionism. Alright, I'd like you to get out chapter 2, please, from the Blackmore chapter I gave you. And I'd like to go to page 26, which says Mary the Colour Scientist.
Some guy that died in
Right, what type of drugs do you want, man?
color what?
Alright. Mary's a colour scientist and she's incredibly smart. She's smarter than any scientist humanity has ever seen. She grows up in a room, and in the room she has access to every fact about colour that we can possibly know. She becomes incredibly, amazingly smart about the way our brains perceive colour. She understands everything possibly about frequencies of light. She understands every aspect of the scientific possible knowledge, the possible scientific knowledge about colour. Everyone good so far? She's crazy smarter, heaps smarter than anyone we possibly know today. Yeah? She has a full physical theory and understanding of the way that physical colour works in the world. Everyone good so far? What I didn't tell you is that she grew up in a black and white room. All of her clothes are black and white. She herself has black hair and white skin. Everything that she sees, her TV, her textbooks, everything she's ever known for the last 40 years while she's been growing up just studying colour is black and white. She understands everything possibly she could know scientifically about colour. Is everyone good so far?
Okay.
Right, now, Damon thinks that's whack.
That's wackier.
Why have we confined this woman to this weird room that only has textbooks on how colour works in the world? We should let her escape. So he goes and he's like, I'm going to save you, Mary. And he opens the door and she comes outside into the meadow outside. And she sees the grass. Now the question is, she already knows everything it's possible to know objectively about the colour green. But then when she sees grass for the first time, that's the first time she ever sees something green. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So, I'd like you to turn to the person next to you. Does Mary learn something new when she sees the green grass or not?
Yes.
Talk to the person next to you.
Describing a physical anatomy of colors. You can only see, say, all the atoms for this color, or they go this way. You can't say how this book really looks like. That's only you have to experience it to look like. You can't so what something looks like by describing atoms.
I told you so. That's iconic because I deleted Braves
Alright. Hand up if you think she does learn something new. Hand up if you think no, she already knew everything relevant about colour. Not sure?
Yeah,
On the edge because you're not sure. Can you explain?
not really.
No? That's alright. Good. If you think that she does learn something new, then you think that there are facts in the world or something that you can understand that goes beyond our ability to objectively and scientifically understand. You think that there is a subjective fact of what it's like, a real thing in the world that exists, that Mary didn't know before and that she does know later. Does that make sense? If you think that that's true, it's going to be hard for you to deny that a full physical theory of the mind is leaving something out. Because Mary had a full physical understanding of colour, but it seems like if you think that she's really learning a new thing, that understanding is leaving something out. Are we good with that? Cool. Turn to the next page, please. So Nagel thinks that there are subjective facts, right? Phenomenological facts in the world. Alright, the next one is called the philosophical zombie problem.
Oh, this thing.
Now, we've already heard from Nagel something similar. What was Nagel's example?
The Martian.
Not the Martian? The robot. Good. Really early on, right? We can imagine a robot that would like walk around and do things, but with no consciousness. Yeah, no awareness of what it was doing. Yeah. In a similar example, like what David Chalmers argues that we could be philosophical zombies. We could be exactly the same as we are, but there would be no consciousness. Yeah? And he says that functionally, or any theory of materialism, is going to be able to explain us as if we don't have consciousness, but doesn't explain anything about consciousness. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. Can we both see how both of these examples are linked to the Nagel reading? Yes? So the consciousness one, the philosophical zombies, is saying that materialism doesn't explain consciousness because it treats us all like we don't have consciousness, like we're philosophical zombies.
C2.
And in the other one,
All year
it's saying there are subjective facts.
Remember to bring a fully charged laptop to school tomorrow, and headphones and compass cards as well. Thank you.
What do they do? Because on my I have what's called I have the program. I don't know, I'm bleeding. Because it comes on all the school laptops. I don't know why I have done it. I'm going through every app that's free to use. I'm still eating coffee. Also, I take it that Japanese yogurt.
Together. To get you over in
Your own words.
It's in C2 at the start of lunch, isn't it? Was it C2 at the start of lunch? When you're listening? You're helping with opening.
Yeah. I'm very helpful, but I don't listen to them. Goes out of the box you made for homework.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
There's more? Oh. Okay. There's more?
On.
All good with that, guys?
Oh, never mind. Yes.
Perhaps.
Alright, if you haven't seen, I've been posting the board notes on Compass in our lesson plans as well. Okay? And we'll see if my phone video works better than the GoPro one. And I'll figure out a way to do that. Is it still going?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Wow. God damn it, GoPro.
1 hour.
Borrow camera.